Hello and welcome to another Scratchcast. I'm your host, Scratchpoint. You'll like me until I piss you off, in which case then you will probably unsubscribe and find someone else on YouTube to devote your time to. But let's not worry about that for now. Oftentimes, it's the simplest questions that are hardest to answer in life. What motivates you? What gets you up out of bed in the morning? What keeps you going? I was having a discussion with a friend earlier, and they were telling me about all the things they did over the weekend. And I was thinking to myself, I'd be lucky if I could fit all of that into one of my weeks. I'm someone that personally has a hard time finding the motivation sometimes to do things. It's getting started that's really the hardest part. Once I'm in the mode of taking action, I can usually be very productive and get a lot of things done. For instance, today I spent an hour on my exercise bike and then spent the day reorganizing my room and then went out for another 2 hour walk with a friend. So in that regard, I was able to, once I was in, up and about doing things, I was able to really get a lot of stuff fit into my day. But I think as far as motivation, sometimes a lot of us don't even stop to think about what it really is that we're doing, what really keeps us going. It's the way society is built, there's not much time for that. We don't even take the time to question it. We're all cogs in the machine that is society, and we have to do these things for survival purposes. We have to keep a roof over our head. We have to keep money in the bank. We have to keep food on the table. These are all necessities that we've created for ourselves. But that being said, we're all motivated by something. Some obviously to a lesser degree than others. Some have trouble finding that motivation. But we all have our reasons, whether we realize them or not. And sometimes it's hard for certain people to find those reasons or to have a reason to keep going. Um, it's almost makes me sometimes envy people that have a definite faith or a definite belief in something higher, because they have something that they believe in, that they trust in, and they take meaning in that. They take meaning in the fact that there's a higher purpose to life. Now, you don't necessarily need religion. You can take your own meaning, you can find your own meaning, you can make your own way. But having something like that, life is more than just this meaningless existence where we have to find our own reasons. I guess in a way, I think it's almost nice to believe that there's some kind of deeper meaning to it all. Although even that is something that I, given life and all of its struggles and hardships and the way it seems so unfair sometimes, even that is something that I have a hard time believing in. But we're on a search for a purpose, a search for meaning, for happiness, personal happiness, and it's like I said, it's difficult to identify. I know that I'm speaking from personal experience here, but give me a moment. Let me just get with the stream here, which I seem to have lost location of. Oh, perfect. Okay. I really love the YouTube streaming. I can't seem to find it. Well, let's not spend too much time on that because I'd like to talk a little bit more. I'd really actually like to have a discussion about this in the comments. I want to see what other people think, what keeps them motivated and what keeps them going, what gives them reason to, I guess, just to be alive, really. Do you go through the motions because you're here, or do you look forward to something every day? Do you just enjoy life? Do you just enjoy your hobbies? Is it for loved ones? You know, what is it? I think that's something that I like to question. I like to think about. And I think also sometimes while I enjoy being a person that questions things and thinks about different things like this, I think sometimes it also works against me because there are times where I think I'm more of a thinker than a doer, and that's not always necessarily a good thing. It can hold you back. I think sometimes stopping and having too much time to think things over can actually be detrimental to your health. I'm not saying we should all go on and be thoughtless and not think about things that we do or say in life. I'm actually someone that's very critical of my own actions, and um, I'm careful to always be myself and try to always be the best I can. Obviously, we all make mistakes, but ultimately, I think it's important to have a reason because living without one is not always fun. It's it's actually rather difficult when you always feel like you're searching for something. And it may be that I speak from a place of personal depression or negative things that I've battled, but I feel like one of the reasons why I don't like it when I don't keep myself busy is because I have too much time on my hands to think about these things. And usually those thoughts go into what some may call negative territory, depressing territory. I won't sugarcoat it. I question why I'm here, what my purpose is, if there is a purpose. I've even wondered, is my purpose to just be some sort of statistic? Now, that may sound dark to some people, and it may not even be an acceptable thing to say in regular everyday discussion. I know a lot of people like to sugarcoat the world and avoid these deeper thoughts, but I personally think that someone that can acknowledge the bad and still find some sort of happiness in this world is better off than a person that just pretends everything is good and everything is always on cloud nine. Because the person that can see the bad and overcome it and still be happy is, in my eyes, somebody that has attained true happiness rather than this false sense of positivity that so many people seem to wear. Because if they were truly as positive as they made themselves out to be, they wouldn't push away people simply because they believe them to be negative at the slightest talk of something that is less than pleasant. Now, I'm not necessarily faulting them. These thoughts are hard to deal with. These questions are not pleasant, but I believe it's important to discuss them whether or not they're pleasant. And we're sort of in this, at least on the internet, this strange era where emotions are a bad thing. And I thank, sarcastically thank, social justice and many other knee-jerk ideologies for that, where it's suddenly bad to have feelings and everything is about logic and reason. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either. But these internet bastions of logic and reason would have you believe they speak only from the point of intellectual honesty and care only for the truth and facts. But that in itself is intellectually dishonest to me because they fail to admit that their deep-seated desire to prove everyone they disagree with wrong comes from their own emotional reaction and the need to feel intellectually superior to others. Perhaps, it's something they need to give themselves a sense of purpose and meaning. It's not wrong, but it is rooted in emotions, whether or not they want to admit it. I don't understand why we can't have both. Why can't we discuss emotions? Why can't people have emotional reactions? As human beings, we've been given the capability to feel a vast variety of different emotions, and to only limit that to being logical and reasonable and writing off every other emotion as invalid or not logical enough to discuss is to write off a good majority of your humanity. I personally don't want to be a robot. I don't want to pretend that cold facts are all that matter. They do matter, but so do emotions, so do feelings, so do people. In caring for each other, we will find more acceptance than treating people like shit and making them feel stupid for not following along with you. What have you missed? Well, I'm here just discussing life stuff and motivation, emotions. It's kind of a little bit of a different stream than what I'm used to. You guys can only watching the video can only see the image on the screen, but I'm currently interacting with chat. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I think that regardless of whether or not we admit it, all of our actions are based in emotion on some level. Some people obviously more than others, and too much of anything is obviously a bad thing. You can say, being too sad is unhealthy. I'm not sure if I would say being too happy is unhealthy, but if you are to the point where you don't acknowledge anything negative, I would say that you're only fooling yourself. Trying to think of, let's see, what else I wanted to cover here tonight. We can't just go around treating people as lesser just because one ideology has come along and kind of ruined something for somebody else, for the whole crowd. You can't say that people's feelings don't matter. Obviously they do. Even your own feelings matter. And to say they don't is a lie. You can't say that you don't care about your own emotions. If you don't, what have you done? You've castrated yourself emotionally? It doesn't really make sense. As I said, all of your actions are rooted in some sort of emotion. Even the ones that you claim are completely from the standpoint of logic and reason, which, by the way, the people that posture logic and reason the most are oftentimes not as logical and as reasonable as they believe themselves to be. In fact, most of them seem like they're just being dicks for the sake of proving people wrong. Yes, well, plenty of people say a lot of things, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're being honest. And I personally believe that they're only fooling themselves. People that don't want to feel emotion or don't acknowledge feeling emotion have some sort of issue that they need to work out, because in my view, there's no logical reason to completely avoid emotions. Sometimes taking a chance on things that aren't the most rational or the most logical can lead to good things. Not always, but definitely sometimes. For example, when it comes to relationships, when you care for someone, you don't always act in the most logical way. And now, of course, we're going to get some interruption where I may have to mute for a couple of seconds because the dog just decided to bark. Hopefully they'll quiet down. Okay, anyway, I'm always getting sidetracked by something when I do one of these streams. And now people pop in to watch. Great. Just as I'm faltering. So while I think that there are definitely people out there that take their emotional reactions to extreme, hence why we have this surge in political correctness, and it's not okay to, do or say certain things because someone somewhere may be offended. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I don't think it's right for society as a whole to censor things like that, because even the people that are saying or doing these so-called offensive things are just expressing themselves, and some of these expressions come from emotions. Yes, there's also people that want to mask the truth because it hurts their feelings, and I don't believe that's right to do either. But ultimately, I think we should be able to present our ideas to society without fear of being censored for them. Of course, there's always extremes, but I'm speaking about the more reasonable times. Yeah, obviously, I think the human mind is an amazing and complex thing, and that's why I would argue that it's the brain that helps you and allows you to feel these emotions. Um, it makes us who we are. So to cut off half of that is dishonest. But I was saying about political correctness and whatnot. No matter what somebody says somewhere or does somewhere in the world, there's going to be at least one person that's going to be offended by this or hurt by this. And that's why, to me, it makes no sense to try to censor things based on feelings. Simply because, are we supposed to pander to that one person somewhere in the world that may be harmed by this idea? And when I say harmed, that's a misuse of the term. I think it is important to be open to new ideas and different perspectives. Nobody likes being disagreed with. To some extent, people don't like having their views challenged. It can be very difficult for people to change their viewpoint. But I think once they get past that knee-jerk reaction to fight back hard against, the disagreement, they can open themselves up to the possibility that, hey, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe I'm not necessarily wrong, but I'm just ignorant to this and I didn't realize that this is the way it actually is, or I've observed this and therefore I can now adapt my feelings and adapt my worldview around these new ideas, rather than just shut everything out and think that if I cover my ears, the truth will go away. Because that doesn't work either. As I said, I'm not for extremes on either side of things. I think it's important to be more moderate. Yes, the ideologues are, they bring things to the point of insanity, but doing the same to them from the opposite side isn't going to help. And I would argue that some of these people are at a point where they're so wrapped up in their thoughts and feelings that they're never going to see the opposite side. So it's almost better to ignore them in favor of the people that are open to something new, to people that are willing to learn. There was at least one other thing I wanted to cover, and I probably should have wrote down more notes, but as I was getting into this, it was beginning to get late and I wanted to get started. before too long. I'm sure it will hit me at some point here. Let's see. Well, I mean, I feel like I can have a sense of morality while still being a reasonable person. Now, I'm sure that not everybody is going to agree with my feelings and my thoughts, and I'll admit that sometimes I do speak from feelings rather than what others would consider cold, hard logic. No, that's okay. I mean, I enjoy discussing these things with other people, so it's all right to uh, be going on in the chat there. I don't mind responding to it. I think the last thing that I wanted to really cover was the wow. Every time I get it on the tip of my tongue, maybe I am getting distracted, but that's comes with old age or something, I guess. Even though I'm not that old. Okay. Sorry, I think I may be having some technical difficulties on top of that, which is unusual because my internet connection is actually usually pretty good. The one other thing, okay, now I got it. The one other thing I wanted to cover, and hopefully everybody can hear, I do agree that it does take challenging ideas, people being open to speaking to each other about issues without instantly closing off the moment they hear something they don't want to. You know, that's going to allow us to come up with new things and see things in a different way. So it is important to try to listen to new things, as hard as it may be sometimes. And I'll even admit that even for me in some areas it's difficult to listen to certain things that I may disagree with, but I do try my best to take it into account and decide whether or not that's something that I am willing to adapt into my worldview. I'm sure I'm not perfect at it. I will admit that. I can even be stubborn in my thoughts and opinions, but I think it's important to have strong convictions. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm not opening myself up to disagreement or the possibility that I may be wrong. There are definitely things over time that I have, adapted my ideals to. But I think ultimately it's very important to be true to oneself. And it's hard to do that sometimes in this world with the way that we are obligated and required to do certain things that we may not really truly want to do, or that we may disagree with. But I think that it's important to be intelligent, it's important to read, it's important to learn, but it's also important to experience, it's also important to feel. And a lot of the times that is in much the same way that social justice ideologues shut people out because of their emotions. There are people on the opposing side that will shut others out on the basis of, I'm logical and I'm reasonable and I'm not going to listen to your emotions. And that's, to me, it gets to a point, like as I said, truth is important, but it does get to a point where what you're doing is almost no better than what the person on the opposite side is doing. And that's the last thing that I wanted to touch on, was experiencing things for yourself, because you can be the most intelligent and intellectual person, you can be well read, but there's something to be said for life experience itself. And as we go on and grow and adapt to new things and experience new things, our worldview will change in a way that something you read in a book can never quite do for you in the same exact way. And that's not me insulting books or intellectual people, because to be honest, I like to read, I like to learn. I read almost every day. It may not be a book, but I always read something. I'm always learning something, whether or not it is something that will be useful to society. That's a different question, but I do try to keep the brain working and, keep the vocabulary up and be open to learning different things and reading different things, as pointless as they may be to others. If it's something you enjoy and something that brings you happiness and purpose and meaning, I think it's important to enjoy it and try to learn all you can about it. Passions are important. But that's pretty much all I had to say. And that's going to be a wrap for now. I don't want to keep this going on for too long. I might come back with maybe another hangout stream or something and have some other people on, because I know sometimes I'll have something to talk about when I come on one of these things, but I'm not always the best at being prepared for them, and I don't like to have a lot of silence in between thoughts. So next time we'll have some people on and discuss things together. Thank you for watching, and I will be back soon.